Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and I've got an awesome video for you today because I have Fractal Design's brand new mini-ITX cases here to review for you guys today to see which one you might want to consider for your next small form factor rig. They are the Meshify 2 Nano and the Define 7 Nano. So two very different cases from Fractal Design this time, so we're dealing specifically with mini-ITX. There are actually micro ATX versions of both of these cases as well. I think there's both of them. They are the Meshify 2 Mini and the Define 7 Mini. So note the difference there. Mini is micro ATX and Nano is mini ITX. Pretty sure there are mini versions of both of these as well. Also coming in white, of course. And what we'll be doing today is just running through the price, the features, doing some cooling testing and coming to some conclusions at the end. So both of these cases then kind of miniaturized versions of other popular cases in Fractal Design's lineup at the moment. You've obviously got the Define 7, the Define 7 Compact, the Meshify 2, the Meshify 2 Compact. They're all some of my favorite cases out there for building PCs for a number of reasons. They're pretty well priced. I love the removable roof sections on those cases as well. Just makes installing your hardware so much easier, especially if it's liquid cooling, just be able to rip off the whole roof section and get full access to the interior. So it's going to be interesting to see what, if anything, Fractal Designers had to cut from these cases to actually squeeze them down to mini-ITX size. And obviously not the smallest mini-ITX cases we've seen from Fractal Design. The era was a lot smaller. And if I just grab my Lian Q58 here, you can see that it is significantly shorter, it's less deep by about an inch or two, and also less wide. So neither of these cases are particularly small when it comes to mini-ITX, but you still save a reasonable amount of desk space compared to a full ATX tower, and just something a little more compact that you might want to transport around or just have on your desk. If you've just got a single graphics card, a couple of SSDs, and maybe an M.2 SSD or something like that, you don't need anything more than this, really, with a mini-ITX motherboard. That's all you need. So that's always been my philosophy with mini-ITX, is that for most of us, the vast majority of PC users just have one graphics card, a couple of SSDs, maybe a hard disk, and cases like this can cater for you rather than something that is twice the size in terms of height or volume. So going to be very interesting to see what, though, this case can actually house in terms of CPU coolers and graphics cards. Can it fit like a triple slot graphics card, for example? What's the CPU cooler height? Have there been any sacrifices made to make it water cooling friendly and air cooling friendly at the same time? And we're just going to take a look at the features and everything else. So if you are interested in either of these cases, they are retailing for around $100 each, and around the same in pounds here in the UK. I'm presuming it's similar amount in euros, maybe a touch more. Both of them available right now for around $100 or around 105, 110 pounds here in the UK. So reasonably priced. And what we'll be doing today, as I say, is running through a quick check over the exterior to see what is different between these two cases, and comparing some thermal results between these two and the Fractal Design Nano. Not the Nano, the Torrent Nano, which is another mini-ITX case that Fractal Design released recently, probably very, very similar to the interior, but obviously kind of interesting to see how it compares in terms of thermals to the Meshify 2 if you're looking for a high airflow mini-ITX case. And we'll be running through some thermal results based on CPU and GPU temperatures and coming to some conclusions at the end. So for now though, don't forget to subscribe, click that like button as well, and also don't forget to comment on this video. I really love hearing what you guys think of the video and think of the product. What mini-ITX system are you running at home? Are you considering a mini-ITX system? And if you do subscribe, don't forget to turn on those notifications, and don't forget to check me out on social media as well. Lots of regular stuff up on Instagram, including all the latest product launches, funky things that I'm working on, like the pink modded Lian Q58. That's going to be water cooled soon, so you'll be seeing that on Instagram and here on YouTube very, very soon as well. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and let's crack on with the reviews. Okay, so first up then is the Meshify 2 Nano, and we're just going to have a quick scoot around to see what we've got in terms of features and everything else with this case. So front panel, what we've got is Type-C port, which you'd expect on a modern case, but it's still pretty impressive to include that at around the $100 price. You've also got two USB 3 ports, a reset button, which some people may find useful. I don't usually use it that much, to be honest. And also the usual front panel ports in terms of audio inputs and outputs. So with this model, the Meshify, there are no accessories. We'll look at the accessories for the Define 7 in a minute, but basically you've got a fixed roof section here which has the vent in it, which you'd expect from a Meshify case. I'm just going to see if this can kind of pop off or do something, because there is like a little latch here, which I'm not sure what that actually does. I think, yep, it does pop off. So you've got no dust filter in the top. That will actually act as a dust filter, or what I should say is no removable dust filter. You can remove this if you need to with the little flanges down there, but thankfully Fractal has actually included this large dust filter in the top, which as you can see was super easy to remove, but does clip firmly into place, so there's no rattling or anything like that. If we have a look at the roof section, you've got both 120mm and 140mm fan mounts. Looks like a 280mm radiator will fit in the roof there, and we'll check clearances and stuff a little bit later once we go inside. Kind of a pretty funky design there. I'm liking how kind of compact, neat and well built this case is. It feels really, really solid, which is good to see. So another feature I like about Fractal cases is how easy the side panels are. So you can see there are no screw holes or thumb screws or anything on the back here. You just have a single kind of thumb grip here, and the whole panel just comes off like that. So no screws or anything. I just love that about Fractal's cases at the moment. Now, as we can see here, we have the roof section, and this looks like it is removable. So I thought it would be fun just to kind of not look at the instructions, just see what we're actually dealing with in terms of out of the box stuff. And then if I spot anything later, I'll just run through it. And oh my goodness, that screw is like mega tight in there. I'm gonna have to use the electric one on this one. Oh, there we go, just to loosen it up a bit. There we go, just removing that. Now, I wouldn't recommend using a standard electric screwdriver, but if you use one with a torque setting like I've got on here, you can just use it, just tweak that torque all the way down so you don't strip any screws or anything like that. That's the only way I would use an electric screwdriver. Of course, if you're just using it around your case, you can usually get away with it, but obviously we've had videos in the past where people have been using an untorqued screwdriver to secure your motherboard and your graphics card and deal with tiny screws. I would absolutely not recommend that you do that. So here we go, that's the radiator mount, and as you can see, the best feature, one of the best features I absolutely love about Fractal Design is the removable roof section. So you've got this whole space to work with here, and that's just going to be absolutely awesome when it comes to mini-ITX cases, because they're super tight at the best of times. I mean, obviously this isn't the smallest mini-ITX case, but what we've got here is a case that is going to be super easy to work with, especially if you're dealing with large air coolers that will sit here, or of course you want to strap your radiator to this radiator mount before you install all your hardware. So it's just going to be a super easy case to work with. And I just love this feature. I don't know whether it's kind of like a patent or something that Fractal Design have got, because I don't really remember seeing it in that many other cases at the moment, but just so good that they're doing that. If we pull off the other panel, again, that's completely tool free, so we can get rid of that straight away. Have a look at the cable tidying. And yeah, we got a pretty decent effort here. As you'd usually expect, you've got the Fractal Design Velcro anchors and ties here, so, and they go all the way around the back panel as well, which I like, because a lot of people, they include them down here, but they actually forget about them in other areas of the motherboard, which you can see over here. But even on this tiny case, Fractal Design has really gone to town with the Velcro ties here. So all in all, it's looking like a really, really easy case to deal with. And you've got a 2.5-inch SSD mount over here, and you've got another one down here, but which is also compatible with a single hard disk. I think you can just about see that down the bottom. There's like a small hard disk tray at the bottom there. So not an amazing array of storage options, but obviously with a lot of mini-ITX cases only catering for 2.5-inch SSDs these days, it's nice to see at least one 3.5-inch there for your hard disks. So another super interesting feature is this fan mount down the bottom. Now I'm just going to try and zoom in here on the camera so you can kind of get a better look at this. And yeah, it's kind of interesting because there's a like a big sort of vent that kind of directs the airflow from that lower fan, and it comes up at kind of an angle, not quite 45 degrees, but it bends upwards into the case. So hopefully you can actually see that on the camera. But it's pretty interesting design. I've not seen anything like that before, but it kind of just directs the airflow up towards your graphics card instead of just pummeling it towards your power supply, which is kind of pointless. So yeah, that's a really interesting design from Fractal Design. And down here in the front, you've got a 140mm fan, and you have a 120mm fan in the rear here. So that's fixed. In terms of size, you can't fit 140mm in the rear, it's 120mm only, but you can adjust it up and down slightly, as you can see with the adjustable mounts. So in terms of graphics card support, there is triple slot support, or at least there are 3 slots. We'll see whether you can actually fit a triple slot card in there in a minute. Power supplies, I'm kind of in two minds about this. I think if Fractal Design had gone for an SFX power supply in the rear, they could have actually reduced the height a bit of this case and probably the width as well, because I mean the only real reason for this case to be this wide is to have the, I mean you've even got like an extra centimetre on the side here, so they could potentially have cut the volume down a little bit by opting for SFX down here. And I think given that the company itself, I believe, offers SFX power supplies these days, I'm kind of in the mind that you should really be using SFX power supplies in an SFX case if it's going to reduce the volume, and sadly that's not the case here. There isn't really a reason at all in this case to use an SFX power supply, because you're not even really saving yourself any kind of cable routing shenanigans either in terms of cable tidying, because you've got the power supply cover, which obviously isn't the situation in a lot of cases. But anyway, it is what it is. I'm just going to see what we've got behind the front panel, because obviously we've got the mesh on the Meshify here. Just going to zoom out again so we can get a bit of a better view of this. So large, pretty much top to bottom mesh, and the way to get at the dust filter down here, you've got one here, which is protecting the lower fan mount. There is another 120mm fan mount in the base, and basically sliding that in and out is pretty easy. And you'll need to remove it to actually get at the front panel and the front fans if you're going to be removing those. So hopefully this is going to be easy to remove. Yeah, relatively easy. And you've got another removable fan mount in here, although I'm struggling to see how you actually remove this, because it's kind of, I think you guys can kind of see what I mean, it's kind of embedded in this plastic shroud, and I can't actually see. Does it just pull off the front? Maybe that's what we're doing wrong here. Okay, fair enough. So you've got a fan mount and it actually slides out. It's all very elaborate, this. So actually you don't need to remove that white front panel. You just kind of deal with the front panel by removing the whole mesh front section, and you're just left with the frame. So don't do what I just did. You don't need to remove the frame. I'm going to actually replace the frame now, just so I can do that in reverse and see how easy it is. Yeah, in most situations you won't even need to remove the frame to actually get at the fan mounts, because you can see you can pretty much access most of those just by removing that front mesh. There's maybe a little bit of clearance in the bottom frame that you can see down there. The fan mounts do extend down beyond the white frame, but it's super easy to remove. And yeah, I kind of like that. It's an interesting take on it. I would have maybe liked to have just been able to remove the dust filter from the bottom, but this is not that much more difficult. So I kind of like that. So let's see how easy everything is to actually press back in. It is proving a little bit challenging at the moment, just working out where the hell everything goes. There we go. That's all back on. So I think you can probably agree that that was a very easy operation to remove all of those fan mounts, so fan dust filters even. And we'll just slot that one back in while we're here. And case feet, again, there's a fair amount of height being added by these case feet as well. They're about, I guess, probably 15 millimeters high, maybe a touch more. That's obviously adding to the height of the case, which is not ideal. But obviously, if you've got a power supply underneath, which is based down there, you're going to need to raise the case off the base a little bit. And we are dealing with a standard layout here, which is, I don't know, I'm in two minds about whether this layout should be used in mini-ITX, but obviously you've got excellent CPU cooler clearance. We'll run through those specs in a minute, just looking through the specs table. Some excellent cable routing. You've got plenty, you've got some routing holes down here and here, a really big one down here for presumably getting up to your graphics card. And if we just head down and let me point the camera all the way down to the bottom. Sorry about the shaking there. You'll have to ignore that. So hopefully you can see that weird angled vent down there. And it looks like this is actually a multiple piece item that hopefully removes out. I don't know whether I can actually do this from just straight off on the video. I'm just trying to actually, oh, it is actually screwed in. So yeah, it looks like you can actually, these basically comes off in two sections. So if you want to fit a radiator down here, you can remove this front section, and that will give you probably another 30 or 40 millimeters of clearance. And if you want to go all out and fit some massive radiator with, or another radiator with a 2 rows of fans or something, then you've got an additional section down here which gives you even more clearance. So whatever radiator combo, radiator and fan combo you're aiming to put into the front of this case, you've got the space to do it, because there is a huge amount of space down there. And again, that just kind of emphasizes just how big this case is for a mini-ITX case. It is very, very flexible, but again, you're sacrificing the compactness that you get with something like Cooler Master NR200P, or the Meshlicious, or the Q58 from Lian Li, for example. So they're a lot smaller, better use of volume, but this is a lot easier to work with. And if you just have a single GPU and you want a fairly large power supply and fairly large CPU cooler and graphics card, then it's a pretty good way about going about it. Just not reducing your desk footprint for the PC or your under desk footprint as much as you might do. But it's all looking pretty solid, very well made, excellent water cooling potential in a variety of different ways, and some really nifty features, not least of all this wonderful open roof section here that we can deal with. So what I'm going to do is put this one back together, and we'll have a look at the Define 7 Nano. Okay, so here we are looking at the Define 7 Nano, and this is obviously essentially the closed paneled version of the Meshify, as we've seen with other cases as well from Fractal Design. So what we've got here is a closed roof section and a closed front section, so a lot less airflow, potentially less noise as well though, because there's less sound leakage. However, what you do get in the box, as you get with the Define 7 and a few other cases from Fractal, is the accessory box, and in here, as you can see, is a mesh roof section. So if you want to have a radiator, probably best to have it in the roof, because you'll get much better airflow with this installed, and super easy to actually install it as well. This top section just pops off. As you can see, there's a bit of sound insulation in there as well, and just grab the vented panel out of the box, and you just whack that on top like so. And super, super easy to actually do that. There's no screws involved or anything like that. And one thing I do kind of like is that if with some other cases that have had pull-off panels like this one, they you tend to have to screw them closed because they have like sort of finger grip holes and that kind of stuff. Nothing like that here, but it is still firmly in place. So you'll need to kind of get your fingernails and just kind of get them in, but it means that there's no chance of you kind of pulling off this panel by accident by gripping onto it, having not secured it with the screws. So kind of the best of both worlds, and you get some reasonable ventilation in there as well. Those holes are pretty large in the roof, but they are protected by the same dust filter that we saw on the Meshify 2 Nano a minute ago. And if I just whip this off, again, we can check out that roof section. You can see basically what we're left here now is with a nearly identical case to the Meshify 2, which is no surprise because that's the way that the larger cases go as well. The internal layout identical pretty much, and it's just the side panels and the front and roof sections that actually differ for the most part. So as you can see, super easy to remove, exactly like the Meshify 2 Nano. Side panels, again, completely tool free, so super easy to remove. And once again, you have the removable roof section. So just to prove it here, I will grab my electric screwdriver and just whip this section off, just so if you're coming in at this point in the video and you just want to check out the Define 7 Nano, then you can see exactly how everything goes. And there you go, you've got that great big section there that's opened up to fit all your hardware inside. Now, if you want to have a look at the inside and how everything goes, I will put a pointer in the video just to see this section in the Meshify 2 Nano, because from here on in, everything is identical. As you can see, it's got the angled vent down here with the fan. You get the same fans included, 140mm in the front, 120mm in the rear. You have the same radiator support, cooling support, PSU cover. Again, you've got the large cable cutout and the two cable cutouts over here. Flipping it around, again, as I say, tool-free panel. This time, the only difference is that you have some noise insulation there. Just going to double check over here if you get that on the other case. No, you do not. So the noise insulation pad that you get here is only included on the Define 7 Nano. So again, it's just going to end up being a quieter case, but with less airflow as well. So obviously the front panel is pretty much the only thing that is significantly different apart from the roof. Obviously you can get a mesh roof as well, or at least a vented roof. What I want to know is what is actually going on underneath here. So again, the bottom section identical with an identical dust filter like so, and to get at the front section fans, what you need to do is just to whip the front panel off, and I'm going to try and do that now on camera. Kind of a bit of a shame we've got, oh no, it's I thought it was a scratch on the front panel, but it's not. It's like a paint, just something has marked it, but it's actually coming off, because I thought I haven't done that. Kind of annoying on a brand new case, but it's not. So let's try and get this off. Oh, yeah, as I thought. For some reason, this model always seems to be a lot tougher when it comes to getting the front panel off. So again, you've got noise insulating like material on the inside there, so it's going to be a much quieter case. But as you can see, absolutely no ventilation in this front panel at all. However, you do get ventilation down the side, so it's not completely enclosed, and that they do actually include dust filters down the side there. I think you can probably just about see that. Now, to actually get at these, I'm trying to work out how you actually do it. And oh, that's pretty cool. So I think they've included that on previous cases, but the side vents actually include their own dust filters. So that's just nice to see, because they could have quite easily cheaped out here and just stuffed a load of mesh panels in there to act as dust filters, but they have actually included a removable filter, which is going to be a lot easier to clean. So really like that from Fractal Design. And if we look at the front section, it's exactly the same otherwise compared to the Meshify 2 Nano. So let's take a look at the specifications. Okay, so we've got the Meshify 2 Nano and the Define 7 Nano pulled up here on the Fractal Design website, and we're just going to run through these specifications quickly and talk about a few details. Both cases are pretty much identical apart from the front end, and the panels that we looked at earlier, they don't actually fit onto either case. So there are some slight differences on the front end. So for example, you couldn't just swap the front panel of the Meshify 2 Nano with the Define 7 Nano. I tried that myself and they don't fit, just for various fitment and cosmetic reasons. So not that you'd probably want to do that anyway, but I thought it might be easier in terms of, you know, testing cooling if I could just swap the front panel over if everything else is the same. But my plan to do that and cut some testing time was foiled because you can't just swap the front panels. So there are some slight differences, but I don't think those differences manifest themselves in any of the specifications. So if we just click down and go and have a look at the specifications, and as you can see, they are all pretty much exactly the same. So you have one 3.5 inch and 2.5 inch drive mounts. There are up to 3 2.5 inch drive mounts included. Well, sorry, up to 3, but only 2 of those are actually included. So there's an optional bracket there. So kind of a bit disappointing that there's only one 3.5 inch drive mount in this case. That's kind of not what you'd expect from a case of this size. You know, the Meshlicious, for example, if you tweak the design inside, you can fit many times more than that. So just kind of, if you're going to miniaturize a case, that's all very well, but given the space that's available in the case, there are plenty of places where they could have added a couple more 3.5 inch drive bays, but it is what it is, so we'll have to deal with it. Expansion slots, obviously there are only 2. Now you can fit larger graphics cards in there, but it's going to be tight and the cooling will be impacted significantly, even though there are vents. And you have that kind of angled fan vent as well, blowing air straight into your GPU. So that's a handy thing to have. But triple slot graphics cards are probably a no-no. You know, 2.5 inch possibly. You might get a bit of a gap underneath. So we've already spoken about the front panel. We've already gone there. So the total fan mounts. Now the fans are kind of where things get a little bit interesting, because I've seen a lot of other websites and YouTube reviews kind of complain about the lack of space in the roof. Well, that seems to be deliberate, but weirdly, if you want to fit 15mm fans in the roof, you can only fit 15mm thick fans, which are basically slim fans. Now, this whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because you're only saving 10mm of space in the roof. But as I spoke about earlier, if they changed to SFX power supplies only in the base, they'd be shaving a whole lot more than that off the space. But by limiting themselves to 15mm thick fans for 140mm fans, then that's limiting them a lot more in terms of their options. And I'm pretty sure that Fractal doesn't even have any slim fans of its own. I think Arctic has recently released 14mm thick fans. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So yeah, it's just a bit of a weird choice given the very limited gains from doing that. I mean, yeah, the case is about a centimetre shorter than it might otherwise be, but it means that you have much less flexibility in the roof. But that is a decision that they've made, so it's not that they've kind of gimped clearance in the roof. It does seem to be have been a deliberate thing, but otherwise, you know, cooling isn't too bad in the roof. And of course, you've got the front section as well. You can fit two full height fans and radiators and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, here if we go down to the top fan section, you can see the single slim fan, which is just. It's just a bit weird. I just don't really know why they did that, if I'm honest. I'd much rather the case was, you know, an extra centimetre taller and I could fit 2 140mm fans up there for, you know, more airflow and lower noise than the 120mm fans. But anyway, it is what it is. So we get 2 fans, I believe, included as standard. We get the front dynamic X2 GP14 fan, which is the one that has the angled vent, which goes up to your graphics card. And then we also have the rear dynamic X2 GP12 fan, which acts as an exhaust. So fairly balanced airflow out of the box. Now there's also the option of a bottom fan, and that is in the base below the PSU cover, but that does require the removal of the hard disk drive tray. But obviously, if you're not using a hard disk, which most of us probably aren't these days, I guess. I'd much rather, with a mini-ITX case, I'd much rather have the benefits of not using a hard disk in terms of space and cables and just go with an external NAS drive, or just going for a bigger, older, SSD. 2.5-inch SSDs can be had for, you can get 2 or 4 terabytes in those for pretty reasonable prices these days. So, well, maybe not M.2, but certainly 2.5-inch. So what else? We've got 15 to 20 millimeters of cable routing space. That's reasonable, and as we saw earlier, that's giving you a decent amount of space to work with. Other things, the case does support the Maximus impact. We've got mini-DTX support, as you can see there, so the crosshair impact is supported. Front radiators, we've got obviously the 120mm variants. We can go up to 240mm. 140mm variants, we can go up to 280mm. So that's pretty much all you can do in terms of radiator compatibility, because of the very limited space in the roof, which is kind of a shame, because I just prefer having my radiator exhausting out of the case rather than exhausting into it. That's just the way I much prefer to have my radiator, and especially with a mini-ITX case, which is going to be limited on airflow and air volume as well. I just kind of like to get the heat out of there rather than dump it into a very small confined space. So again, all these dimensions are exactly the same for each case. So this is where you would notice the difference. It's in the PSU length or the GPU maximum length, but they are both exactly the same for both cases. The GPU max thickness is exactly the same as well. 2.8 slot limit. Obviously, we were looking at there's no 3-slot option there. Certainly not as far as the PCI Express or PCI bracket goes at the rear. And then the CPU cooler maximum height limit is exactly the same as well. So finally then, we've got the actual case dimensions, and this is the Meshify on the left. So the Meshify is a couple of millimeters shorter in terms of length than the Define. I don't imagine that's going to be important to anybody at all. Like, if you're trying to cram it into as small a space as possible, then yeah, there might be a bit of a difference. If you get rid of the case feet, there's a slightly bigger difference in terms of the extra protrusions and all those kind of things. But that is pretty much it. So kind of an interesting addition down here though is that the Meshify actually weighs about 1 kilo less, just over 1 kilo less than the Define. So I'm guessing that mesh is just lighter than the solid panels of the Define. But again, I don't view that being much of an issue for anybody. So that's it for the specifications. So let's check out the performance. Okay, so the testing hardware we are using then is a Core i5-10600K at stock speed, along with a Z490 motherboard and an AMD RX 6700 XT, and the CPU cooler is the Noctua L9i. So this is running at full speed, and the reason why I use this cooler rather than a tower cooler is just so I can fit it in more mini-ITX cases, so I can get more comparable results. The only other thing you need to know is that the GPU cooler is locked at 70% speed to limit the impact of the fan speed changing. So to start with then, the CPU temperature, unsurprisingly, the Meshify 2 Nano with the coolest temperature, the Define 7 Nano with the second lowest temperature. But interestingly, the other case you might want to consider if you're going for something a little larger is the Fractal Design Torrent Nano, and that interestingly had a slightly higher CPU temperature even than the Define 7, but then it does just have one fan. The other temperatures we want to look at are, of course, the GPU temperatures. And here there was something pretty interesting going on with that fan duct, because it does seem to really impact GPU thermals. The Meshify 2 Nano with the vented front, so giving that fan an easier time, knocked 6 degrees off the GPU temperature of the Torrent Nano, and the Define 7 Nano suffering a bit from that front panel, but it was still cooler than the Torrent Nano, so some interesting findings there. So what do we make of Fractal Design's brand new Nano mini-ITX cases then? Well, I think both the Meshify 2 Nano and the Define 7 Nano are very reasonably priced. As you'd expect from Fractal Design, they don't usually charge crazy amounts for most of their cases, especially kind of the mid-range ones like these. That said, they are very, very well made. Everything fits together perfectly, and the tool-free design and lots of other features are still very, very welcome at this price. The miniaturization process, essentially shrinking a much bigger case down to one of these sizes, does have its benefits and its drawbacks though. So the benefits, obviously you get lots of the features that are included on its bigger cases with these smaller Nano mini-ITX cases. So you get the removable roof section, which allows you to open up the case to get better access at the interior. You still get the same great build quality, the same tool-free design, excellent cable routing, etc, etc. The downside though is that in just miniaturizing a much larger case, you're not building a case from the ground up, and therein lies the problem, because mini-ITX has shown time and time again that that is the only way to do it properly. You can do it. There's nothing wrong with these cases. They still have excellent CPU cooler clearance, space for large graphics cards, but there are a couple of issues in terms, apart from their size. They're obviously very, very big for mini-ITX cases, but you're not getting particularly great storage support. There's only one 3.5-inch mount in the case, although that is kind of slightly due to the fan duct, which does improve GPU cooling, so we can't complain too much about that, but there are cases out there that perform pretty much the same and have more space for hard disks. The real issue comes in terms of the volume and the fact that they've got larger graphics card space in there, they've got large processor cooler space in there, and really the fact that they haven't gone for an SFX power supply means that the case is much larger than it otherwise might be. On the flip side of that, they've kind of gone too restrictive in some areas, almost in a way to try and save volume. For example, in the roof, there's no radiator support, and if you go for 140mm fans, you're limited to slim fans, which just, given you're only saving a centimetre of space there, just doesn't really make a lot of sense. So there are other issues as well, aside from the volume and size. The 8-pin EPS 12-volt CPU connector, you need to remove your motherboard in order to actually thread that through the hole. So if that was just literally a millimetre or two deeper, you'd be able to fit any cable through there, no problems at all. But that's kind of a bit of an oversight. It's just a little bit sloppy from a case that is otherwise excellent in terms of cable routing. But for me, the real downside, as I say, is that these cases aren't designed from the ground up to cater for mini-ITX motherboards, and that does show in some of the limitations. So if you want a large CPU cooler, it's fine, but you'll be limited in terms of custom liquid cooling because there's only one radiator mount in the case, which might be limiting for you. So that's pretty much all I've got to say on the cases. They're reasonably priced, very well made, excellent features, great cable tidying, good cooling as well, especially for your graphics card, thanks to that angled vent, which basically reduces the angle that the air has to kind of come in the case and then into your cooler rack. The air is already pointing at 45 degrees and basically pointing straight at your graphics card. So as long as your graphics card is long enough to actually take advantage of that, you'll see some great GPU cooling from either of these cases. The real downside, as I say though, is that they are very, very large, and I think the next mini-ITX case that Fractal designs, or at least if the next one or two that it comes out with, one of them I would like to see not just a miniaturized version of a larger successful case. I would like to see something built from the ground up from Fractal Design that still makes use and showcases its great philosophy around case design, which is good cooling, aesthetics, great features, and excellent cable tidying. General ease of use as well, with removable roof sections or something like that. There's a whole bunch of things that it could incorporate into that kind of case, and I just want them to really kind of stretch their legs when it comes to the design of their next mini-ITX case. We've already had the Era, which was a good effort. It was a very unique mini-ITX case, but somewhat limited in terms of space and cooling. I just want to see Fractal Design do something whereby it can compete with the likes of the Cooler Master NR200P, the Meshlicious, the Lianli Q58, or all those kind of things. So if Fractal Design wants some help, They know where to come. I'm here, I'm waiting. There are lots of other mini-ITX enthusiasts out there as well that could probably point them in the right direction, but definitely a ground up effort is something that I know a lot of you would want to see as well from this company that we've all kind of grown to admire, right? I don't think they've produced many bad cases over the years, and they've produced many excellent ones. So for these two cases though, if you're making a decision, then obviously if the size is acceptable and the space for just one hard disk is acceptable, but you want to house a very large processor cooler and a large graphics card as well, these are some pretty good options. And of course, they're probably easier to work with than some of the much smaller mini-ITX cases as well, especially thanks to the removable roof sections. So that's it from me. I'd like to thank Fractal Design for sending these cases over, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe on this video as well. Your subscription means a lot. And don't forget to comment down below, as I've already mentioned, because it just helps me get noticed, gives me a bit of notice on YouTube. And also, I just like hearing what you say, what you think about your own PCs, what you think about these cases. Is either of these Nano cases on your shortlist for your next case? If not, why not? Are there things that you really don't like about them? So always interested in hearing those discussions in the comments as well. And of course, like this video if you found it informative. And also, I will say, don't forget there are some timestamps below, because I know this is a pretty long video now, but we've gone into a fair amount of detail on both of these cases. It is a double review after all, so don't forget the timestamps to go back and look, enabling you to go back and look at the sections that are most valuable to you, whether it's the specifications, cooling performance, the hands-on, or whatever. So that's it from me. Stay safe, and I will see you soon.